Good afternoon and welcome to this podcast brought to you on behalf of the Merseyside Junior Lawyers Division, kindly sponsored by the University of Law, which you are here for a 4-part series. So my name is Faye Morris and I am a current paralegal at Waitmans and one of the Careers and Education representatives for the 2023-2024 MGLT Committee. So today I'll be hosting this episode, joined by Katherine Meehan, who is the Careers Manager for the Liverpool and Chester campuses at ULAW, where we'll be focusing on all things applications and interview tips. So firstly, thank you so much for joining us today, Katherine.
Thanks for having me.
Could you please begin by telling us a little bit about yourself?
A little bit about me and my background. I studied law at the University of Nottingham, but quite ironically, I ended up after the second year of my degree doing some VAC schemes and deciding that I actually didn't want to be a solicitor. What I basically concluded from those experiences that I wanted to work with people. And I ended up kind of embracing a career in human resource management, doing a master's and my CIPD qualification. And that's really the stage where I fell in love with recruitment. So when I did that, I then spent 10 years doing graduate recruitment in the legal sector, working both for firms in London and in the regions, including Olswang, Ashurst, DWF and Addleshaw Goddard, before ultimately then coming to the University of Law. I now work as a careers manager and, as you say, kind of working with Liverpool and Chester students. And for me, it's the perfect role because it's now, having seen all sides of that recruitment process, I'm now helping the students secure their dream jobs. And it's incredibly rewarding when they get in touch and say, yay, I'm the role.
Yeah, sure it is. Brilliant, thanks, Katherine. So the first question I have for you is, what do you think makes students stand out on applications? You know, you'll probably see a lot over your time.
What makes them stand out? I think for me, the student that stands out is one that's really tried to consider the idea of a law firm as a business.
Yes.
Not just to see it as an employer, somewhere where they're going to work and get a job. It's got to be a level deeper. And I think as part of it, we talk a lot about commercial awareness and students stress over how do I evidence that, how do I get that across in my applications? And I think, a student that really sets themselves apart in an application is one that, really thinks about how does a law firm market itself? Maybe it's got target sectors, maybe it's really pushing on, an innovation idea, really stressing how they go above and beyond in delivering excellent client service. And I think a candidate that can really digest what a law firm is trying to achieve and how it markets itself, for me, is the kind of thing that really stands out, and it shows that commerciality and understanding the law firm as a business.
You've gone that extra mile to make it stand out.
Yeah.
Thanks, Katherine. So in terms of applications then, how long do you think that student should ideally be spending on these?
How long's a piece of string? It's incredible. I do encounter students that genuinely will say, how many applications do you think I can knock out in the next 3 days, Kat? Not the way to go. I think, provided a student has a really sensible strategy, that for me is the crux of it, really. They need to be determining, the firms that they're targeting, having a strategy so that the total number of applications that they're doing over time with deadlines that are coming up is manageable. And obviously every application is different. Some might be a CV, cover letter. Others might be quite a long form, of lots of different application questions. Yeah. So, it can really be impacted even by the nature of the application form. But I think from my side, it's the tailoring element. I think a student that's really spent an appropriate amount of time on an application is one where they can really read that application back and say with confidence that they have researched the firm in a way that they know and appreciate what is unique about them, that they're able to apply perhaps anecdotes of things that stand out from conversations of people, with people that they've met, and bring that into the application. Or it might be that they've read beyond the website, researched on, other trainee blogs, or looked on social media, or looked at what they're talking about on LinkedIn. And that for me is how far a student should be going in the depth of researching applications. And obviously that takes time. And So yeah, I'm not going to pin an actual figure on it, so I'm going to cop out with that.
Yeah,
but
just so and tailor them to that.
But yeah, it's the tailoring thing that's the meaty bit.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. So obviously in your role, you see a lot of applications all the time. Are there any kind of common mistakes that you see often that students should be aware of?
Where to start? Common mistakes. So probably linked with what we were just saying there, that idea of not really enough tailoring of the application to the role or the firm.
Yeah.
And I think the other bit of it is in the why the firm question. There needs to be real depth to that, but not from just the perspective of listing key facts, where they have offices, or here's a list of 3 clients that you have. Or, oh, look, you won this award in...
They can just find on the website.
You can just find on the website, and you read that back as a recruiter, and you're just thinking, gosh, you're just telling me things about the firm that I already know. And it's not really showing that you've digested what that firm's about. And I think, you take the example of something like they've won an award. Well, why did they win that award? Was it to do with, an exceptional, sort of a new innovative project that they've launched, or a platform, or if they've won Best Law Firm of the Year, what was it about the experience of working at that firm that really stood out? Or what do they implement as a business to support well-being within the firm? And those are the kind of things that will add real context and value to an application. And I think the other common mistake that I see, and I probably say this several times every day, on a daily basis, we talk a lot about competencies in applications and interviews. And of course, students know that they need to show employers that they have these competencies, but often it just becomes statements to say, hey, I'm a great communicator, or hey, I'm a great team player. But it's that showing, not just telling. And I think that's the thing that really comes out when I'm reading applications or reading CVs. And it's quite difficult to know how to evidence those competencies. So it is a challenge, but it's trying to make sure that you're not just making those statements of key competencies. And then the other one that I'm seeing quite a lot of at the minute, I think particularly for those that are targeting paralegal applications, again, it's a little different in focus there, because you are needing to sell a lot more the love of that practice area. If you've got the head of that department reading that application and wanting to feel that you share
of course,
the love for that practice area equivalent to them, it's making sure that really shines through in your application. And I think that is something that I am often having to remind students about. Make sure that you're really bringing that out in a cover letter when you're applying for paralegal applications.
Yeah, I think also as well, just kind of little mistakes that we see, just maybe spelling and stuff like that. Just always proofread, because you'll find something on the 100th time of reading it and think, oh, I forgot that, or get a second pair of eyes to look over it, I'd say.
Always.
So thanks, Catherine. I think now we've covered a lot about applications. It's probably a good time to move on to kind of interviews, going to that next stage, because often we see candidates going on to assessment centres, and an interview is part of one of them. Do you have any top tips for students on how you think they could conduct a successful interview at all?
Yeah, so it's funny thinking about a successful interview, because for many years of training interviewers, partners that are there thinking, oh, I know what the perfect candidate looks like. And they might have quite different opinions. But the one word that always used to come through in the wash-ups that we'd have at the end of the day when they got particularly excited about a candidate was the word impact. And I think it's a word, again, that I use quite frequently with my own students. But I think you could have an interviewer that's got a long form with all these different competencies saying, please give me evidence for all of these. But for a partner that may be interviewing a candidate, their main benchmark is this someone that would get along well with my clients? Could I take them to a client meeting today? And if the answer is yes, they'll get so excited. There'll just be this level of animation of thinking, brilliant, when can they start? So that point of impact for me is such an important one. And I think the other side of it is students obviously think that, an interview might be some form of grilling, that the interviewers are there to really try and put them on the spot.
Just want you to do well. well.
No, and it's always just remembering that interview is a two-way conversation with a purpose.
Of course.
So to be in that scenario and having good rapport with your interviewers, making sure that you're engaged to sort of build that rapport on the day, that again feeds into that first point about really showing that you've got the impact, you'd have the ability to work well with clients.
And the enthusiasm of it as well.
Exactly. And I think the other point I'd say with the successful interview, and again, something that is a bit of a bugbear for me with students, is having appropriate questions.
At the end.
At the end.
You always need them.
And I've heard some strange ones over the years, but I think it can be a little bit of a deal breaker. You don't want to end the interview on a bad note.
No.
You want to use the interviews as use the questions as another opportunity to really evidence the research that you've done.
Yeah, and have that lasting impact, yeah.
Exactly. And, rather than it just being a case of, why do you like working here? It needs to just have more substance to it. And I think also considering who are your interviewers, what's an appropriate question to them and their role. And I thought there was a really nice example a student used recently, where they talked about the fact that they'd researched their interviewers, they'd been in that firm for a number of years. And the question they came up with, which I really liked, was acknowledging the fact that they'd been with the firm for a number of years and asking their advice on how the firm had changed in that time.
Yeah, that's a good question.
And I thought that was really nice. It was very natural, but it was engaging to get them talking about their experiences of working there. And I just thought that was a really nice way to frame it.
Because it's really subjective, isn't it? It'll be different for everyone.
Yeah. So I thought that was a nice example. But yeah, just making sure that it's relevant, because you could have given all these fantastic answers in interview, and then just with those questions at the end, you just need to make sure you've got that positive end point.
That's really good advice. Thanks, Katherine. So obviously some students, if they've never done an interview before, they can be particularly nervous. I know I have been in the past when it's been my first interview. How do you think students can probably combat their nerves on the day, do you think?
I think it's important to recognise that I know from many years of being the grad recruiter that I always wanted to make sure that candidates felt comfortable and as calm as they could be. And it goes back to, again, we want it to be as pleasurable as an experience as it is. We don't want people to come out from an interview or an assessment day feeling traumatised. It needs to be a positive experience. So I think my tips when I was thinking about this question was, I think there is that point around arriving in good time. You don't want to be arriving in a flap, in a stress.
No, because you'll make yourself feel worse.
And it just exactly. So, potentially even doing like a dry run in the days before, know where you're going, assess what your public transport options are to get there, know where the office is, have a sense of which is the kind of route to reception, etc. And I think the other thing with nerves, I speak to lots of students again where they'll talk me through what they're expected to do on an assessment day. And there'll be some elements of it where they'll think, you know what, Kat, actually, I'm quite looking forward to that. But then there'll be other elements of it where they'll go, oh my gosh, that's scary. And I think there's a reason for that. You're never going to attend an assessment centre where you're going to love the idea of every element of it. There will be elements that you are particularly nervous about. Mm-hmm. And I think, it's just that recognition of the fact that employers are testing a really broad set of skills. That's why an assessment day is so varied with the type of exercise they get you doing. And I can genuinely say, I can count on one hand the number of candidates over the years that have come out of an assessment day saying, Kat, I smashed that.
Yeah, you always review your own performance.
Yeah, and did any of them get the job? No. So I think it's recognising that they are purposely designed to be challenging. Yeah, it's inevitable. And then I think the other bit of it is also, if you are nervous on the day, make sure if you're offered a drink or some water, that again is a useful thing to sort of give you some thinking time, to take a breath, take a sip of water, even potentially say to your interviewers, that's a really good question. Is it all right if I take a minute to think about it?
Yeah, because they encourage you to do that, don't they?
Absolutely. So if there is that challenging question or nerves kind of get a hold on the day, I think it's important to recognise, again, just to take a moment, take a breath, take a sip of your water and just
have a think about it, yeah.
Yeah, and your interviewers will expect that. So, yeah, I think it's just being mindful of that and dealing with it as best you can on the day.
Yeah, thanks, Katherine. So obviously part of an assessment day, an interview is one of them parts. Where do you think that students could potentially lose marks in an interview, or anything that you've seen before in, mock interviews that you thought, oh no, that's not afford for the day, but thank you.
I think this is a really interesting question. For me, I think there's a degree of not being genuine. I've had candidates, I remember one in particular, who made a real statement of the fact that on a couple of levels, he'd walked into his interview, had immediately engaged to shake first the hand of the male interviewer.
Right, okay.
Assuming that they were the more senior figure in the interview panel. Unfortunately, what he hadn't appreciated was that the lady sitting alongside him was in fact the person that headed up
right, okay.
the trainee recruitment. And I've had people before that often at interview will talk, in trying to promote themselves in a way that will almost be to the detriment of sounding genuine. They might be talking about work experience, where they talk about, I had it once with a candidate that talked about sitting with a partner at a firm that I'd worked for. And I had to correct them to say, and it was very uncomfortable, that person isn't a partner. I recruited them as a trainee a couple of years ago. And, we know that students can think.
It's again showing your knowledge, isn't it?
Yeah. But you have to be genuine. You have to be genuine in how you come across. And I think sometimes students can get a bit fixated on saying what they think they're into.
And the fact of being assessed.
And trying to, be showy with examples that they give. But ultimately, the crux of being a good lawyer is having honesty, integrity and professionalism. Of course. So if that doesn't come out in how you present yourself, you're losing your credibility as a candidate.
No, that's a really good point. Thanks, Katherine. So obviously we've covered a lot today in terms of interviews, applications. Are there any kind of key takeaways you think from today that would benefit students going forward for these assessment days and interviews and things like that?
Yeah, so I think for me, when students are researching law firms, whether that's with applications, whether it's for interviews, I think the key message is think more client. Yeah? On the basis of, why might a client instruct that particular firm? So when you're researching, rather than it just being very much drawn to particular pages of the careers section of the website, they're looking a little bit more about key messaging. They're looking a little bit more around key values. How do they market their approach to client service? How do they market themselves in how they talk about their expertise on LinkedIn or through news and insight sections of the websites, where they talk about having sector specialism? How are they communicating that in a way that is impressive? And why do they talk about sectors? And for me, that's the kind of thing that really stands out. I think it goes back to, again, that commerciality
and honing your research.
And honing the research in a way that has real commercial awareness, so that where you are presenting an answer like that to your interviewers or to a recruiter that's reviewing your application, that they're looking at that and thinking, wow, this is someone that's really taken the time to understand what our business is about.
And really knowledgeable.
And really try to apply that in their application or in their interview answers.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Katherine. So thanks for your time today for taking part. That was really useful. And I'm sure the students will find that very beneficial as well.
Thank you.
So thank you.